All right, well, we keep talking about the invasion. We keep talking about remigration being inevitable. So what I wanted, and also civil war has been a massive thing, which has come up. David Betts was doing the rounds. We've seen the Met Police training to beat up patriots and all this kind of stuff, right? So I wanted to explore hypothetical situation where civil war does break out. If things keep going on the trajectory that we're on. This is a black pill, I'm so sorry. But I wanted to explore it. I wanted to see the best case scenario, the worst case scenario, and a middle of the ground scenario, taking into account migration trends, fertility rates of the individuals that are coming here, the ethnicities, the ideological leanings of those individuals, and just explore what the UK would look like. So after the UK falls, this is what we're going to be looking at. I'm sorry. I know, it's really cheery.
You mean like when sort of a central government entirely collapses and there's no state anymore?
Well,
there's no police or
into pure anarchy.
There is some. So there is some in this, right? So best case scenario, regional pluralism and migrant influence. This is the absolute best. We're going to start from the best, okay? So overview. The UK faces low-intensity conflict over economic inequality, cultural tensions, leading to balkanisation into semi-autonomous regions. Migrant communities, particularly South Asians, Muslims is what they're referring to, obviously Arabs, and Africans gain demographic and political influence. Now, actually, you can see that already happening, right? This is the best case scenario. I know, yes.
See, I don't want to cut you off too early. But I do think if there was just very quickly, if there was ever a full collapse situation, it would be pretty brutal, and I don't think it would end well in the long run for the invaders. I'll just put it like that.
All right. Well, yeah. So political influence due to higher fertility rates, but do not fully replace the natives. Right, that's best case scenario. Regions stabilise through power sharing, maintaining a pluralistic UK. Also, I did factor into what the rest of the world would look at the UK as well in this scenario, because I thought that would be really interesting, because we were the beacon of the West. We quite literally fertilised the Western world with our culture. That is all spawned from us. So I wanted to see what the rest of the world would view us if these scenarios happened. So we would have reduced global clout in the best case scenario. Migration and demographic replacement. So dominant groups would be Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslims, because combined 2.5 million in 2025 grow rapidly due to replacement rates, basically fertility, reaching 10% of the population by 2040. Indian, Hindu and Sikhs, 2 million. Nigerians, 500,000. They would also expand, but at slower rates. This is taking into their own documented fertility rates. So not great, not ideal. Native British, 80% in 2025 would decline to 70% by 2040 due to low fertility rates. And emigration, because we would leave, which we're already seeing. We do see that. So regional control, Muslims would dominate urban pockets, e.g. Bradford, Birmingham, East London. They already do. This is still the best case scenario. It's basically saying it's going to stay as it is, effectively, with slight change. So that would form 30 to 40% of local populations. Indians and Sikhs control economic hubs in West London and Leicester. Rural areas, e.g. Yorkshire, Cornwall, would remain 90% white British, which I could see that happening. That's effectively what it is now anyway. Outcome, no group would fully replace natives, but Muslims and Indians gain disproportionate influence in urban governance due to youth bulges, 25% of under 18s in cities by 2035. It's really, really stark. It's really, really, really stark. There's more. There's a lot. I know you're dying, I know, but let's just get through this. So ideological and cultural impact, Muslim influence, Pakistani, Bangladeshi communities push for Sharia compliant local policies. They already are, but stop short of theocratic rule. This is the best case scenario due to economic priorities. Somali clans remain insular, focusing on community survival. The Indian and the Sikhs, so they would promote secularism, economic liberalism, aligning with native moderates to counter Muslim conservatism. Their high education levels, 60% degree educated, cement influence in tech and finance. Native response, rural natives would embrace reform UK-style nationalism, resisting migrant influence, while urban natives adopt multiculturalism to maintain economic stability. Cultural shift, UK remains Christian, secular in name, but urban areas adopt hybrid identities, i.e. Islam. Economic output, Indians and Nigerians would drive urban economies, contributing to 20% of GDP through tech, healthcare and finance. Pakistani and Bangladeshis fill low-wage roles, transport, retail, but unemployment in these groups, 15% strains welfare. Rural economies would rely on native-led agriculture, contributing 10% of GDP. An impact, GDP would shrink. This is best case. GDP would shrink by 15% due to trade disruptions, but stabilizes as regions form trade pacts. Muslim-run cities like Bradford face economic lag due to low skills. I'm laughing, but I can see all of this happening. Sorry, chime in now. Come on. I want to get through the bulk of it.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I've said it before, I think, even a while ago now, that I think that's what will happen, is it won't necessarily just be pockets of foreign people in the cities. Eventually, looking far beyond 2050 or 2060, there will just be pockets of white people, rural villages and towns and hamlets, which are majority white. They become the pockets.
Which is effectively what this is, and that's what I can see happening. White flight would occur. Everyone would just leave, which they already have. Everyone's just left these cities and gone, this is just full of detritus. I'm gone. I'm done.
The other thing I was going to say, which springs to mind, is that we have had similar things like this happen before. So the first thing that sprung to mind was when the Romans left in 409, 410 AD. Left, the state just collapsed. Effectively, completely collapsed. Any sort of central government just disappeared, kind of overnight, almost overnight. Also, during the 6th and 7th centuries, the invasions of the Angles and Saxons and the Jutes, again, some sort of mass, civil unrest is putting it kindly. Or even in the very early 12th century, we've got the anarchy, known as the anarchy. The contest between Empress Matilda and Plantagenets versus Stephen of Blois and his progeny. Again, a type of anarchy. There's no central government, really. And there's certainly no police force or anything in the 12th century. So Britain has already gone through convulsions of this magnitude. Let's not even mention Viking invasion. Anyway, carry on.
Economic output. I covered that, didn't we? Sorry. Crime rates. Now, this is interesting. Crime rates and group interactions and governance. So this is best case scenario. Trends. Urban crime would rise by 20%, even though it's sky high now, but it would rise by 20%, with Pakistani, Bangladeshi youth overrepresented in gang violence, e.g. drug trafficking, knife crime. Somali groups would engage in clan-based disputes, which they already do.
And all of this, is in the near future. This is by the 2050s or...
By 2030, some of this is. Yeah. So,
how was it that you calculated all of this, or was this just a thought experiment that you put yourself through?
So this was narrowing down all the statistics through AI.
All right.
So a probability machine, basically using it for what it's actually designed for, inputting data and creating a probable scenarios, effectively. Just hard facts. That's all it is. It's just taking into account hard facts. So native far-right militias would target migrant areas, sparking riots. I can see that. Don't condone it. Mitigation, regional police backed by EU training would reduce crime through community policing. Homicide rates would stabilise at 1.5 per 100,000 by 2030. Group interaction, tensions would flare between Muslim enclaves and native nationalists with sporadic violence. And this is, e.g. 2023 Leicester Hindu-Muslim clashes, so it's just taking into account some bits like that. Hindu Sikhs act as mediators, leveraging economic clout. Rural natives isolate, limiting conflict but reinforcing segregation. Cooperation, power-sharing councils in mixed cities, e.g. Birmingham, would happen. So balance between Muslim, Indian and native interests, preventing dominance by any group. This is the best case scenario.
And this also, all I have to say, hinges on the idea that enough natives gain some kind of consciousness about their own identity to organise around their own interests without, as is being predicted here, going into the kind of multicultural mindset of an inner city.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the absolute best case scenario.
And this looking forward to 2030, of course, history won't end there.
No,
the trajectory will just get worse and worse and worse.
There's some on here which is a little bit forward thinking, past that as well. So governance, what would that look like? What would the structure of the government look like? So the UK would split into effectively 5 or 6 micro-states. London, Metro, Northern Union, Celtic Pact, right? So urban regions adopt inclusive democracies with Muslim and Indian representation, 30% at councils. Rural regions elect nationalist leaders. Can see that happening. Policy, London would legalise Sharia arbitration for civil disputes, while rural areas ban migrant resettlement. National identity fragments with Britishness confined to history. So global response, how would the rest of the world align with the best case scenario? Well, the EU would support urban microstates, viewing them as trade partners, but condemns rural nationalism. I can see that. India and Nigeria invest in their, their sort of diasporas, boosting London's economy. The US offers limited aid, prioritising NATO stability. Pakistan and Turkey lobby for Muslim enclaves, raising tensions. Outcome, the UK would lose global influence, while India replacing it on the UN Security Council. Muslim majority cities align with Gulf states, while rural regions seek Commonwealth ties. So that's best case. Middle ground. Ethnic enclaves and a stalemate would occur. So the UK would descend into a protracted civil war driven by economic collapse, native resentment and migrant assertiveness. Balkanization would create ethnic and ideological enclaves, with Muslim groups controlling urban strongholds and natives dominating rural zones. It's just a step up from what we've just covered, basically. Stalemates prevent total collapse, but perpetuate low-level conflict, migration, demographic replacement. And just some figures, right? So Pakistani, Bangladeshi Muslims would grow to, say, 12% of the population by 2040, forming majorities in exactly the same areas like Bradford, 60%, Birmingham, 50%, Somalis controlling smaller enclaves. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse as we start to look through this. I won't cover it all because obviously it's quite exhaustive.
I suspect that it'll be very difficult for us on the trajectory we are on today to avoid balkanisation.
So the middle ground.
Sectarian, endless sectarian unrest.
So you can see some of that. So that's actually a really great point. You can see some of that in the ideological and cultural impact element. So Muslim influence, Pakistani, Bangladeshi enclaves adopt conservative Islamism. We're already seeing that. We already see that with 20% of youth radicalised. We already see that. Somalis prioritise clan loyalty, clashing with other Muslims. Sharia law governs Muslim areas, alienating natives. We already see that because they've already created enclaves. Hindus and Sikhs align with native moderates. We already see some of that as well, actually. Right? So what you've said, this is the balkanization scenario, the hypothetical. Forming anti-Islamist militias in mixed cities. Their economic success, 40% in professional roles, fuels resentment from poorer Muslims. I could see that as well, quite frankly. Native response, what would we do? Well, rural natives form far-right militias, e.g. British Dawn, targeting Muslim enclaves. Urban natives would either flee or assimilate into migrant-dominated cities, diluting British identity. Cultural shift, well, urban areas become Islamic in character. Mosques replace churches, already seeing that. While rural zones preserve Anglo-Saxon traditions. And the UK splits culturally with no unified identity. So what would happen economically speaking? Impact GDP would fall by 40%. And London's financial sector would collapse. Hyperinflation, 150%. This is the middle ground. Destroy savings, fueling black market trade. So crime rate, obviously, would just go through the roof. But governance, right? What would happen governance-wise? Structure. UK would fragment into 10 or 12 enclaves. Muslim warlords would rule Midland cities with Sharia law. Sikh Indian councils would govern London's suburbs. Native warlords control rural fiefdoms and neo-fascist regimes. Scotland and Wales would declare independence, but fracture internally. Yeah, can see all of that. They don't have.
They're still subject to all this stuff.
Yeah.
Wales and Scotland got the exact same problems as.
Yeah.
The rest
but they would just go,
the
fragment and destroy
their demographics aren't anywhere near as bad as England's are for the time.
It's not as bad. I mean, their populations to begin with are tiny in comparison, but they will still have enclaves, won't they? Or still already have, I mean. So
policy, Muslim enclaves would ban alcohol and enforce dress codes while native zones purge minorities. No national governance exists. Taxation is extortion-based. Global response, well, how would the rest of the world see us on a trajectory which is highly likely right now? The EU would quarantine the UK, fearing jihadist spillover. We're already seeing that internally in the EU. Right, they are already, the Schengen zone's not there. They sort of stop at the Schengen zone, right? Yeah. So we're already seeing that in the EU. So they would quarantine the UK. They'd be like, no, done. Turkey and Pakistan would arm Muslim enclaves. Why would they not? They arm like Iran and stuff like that. They arm the rest of the sort of. But they fuel terrorism in the Arab world, right? So why would Turkey and Pakistan not look to do that in the UK if they could? While India backs Sikh and Hindu factions, Russia and China would supply weapons to all sides, prolonging chaos. And the US evacuates citizens and abandons bases, which, we'd probably see that as well. Outcome, the UK becomes a failed state.
Already there.
Yeah. So, sorry for the black pill, I'm so sorry. With Gulf states funding Muslim enclaves, global trade would bypass the UK and refugees would overwhelm Commonwealth nations. So the British would just leave.
Well, in a situation like that, I can see Australia in particular being inundated with Englishmen escaping.
Well, it's Camp of the Saints territory.
Yeah.
Where to the point where newly arrived immigrants have got the power to truly keep the borders entirely open, and then we completely flooded. That's not exactly what happens in Camp of the Saints, but instead of it being a few 100,000 a year or 1 million a year, it's millions and millions and millions every year on year.
Just spilling over. Worst case scenario, I'll spend a little bit more time on this one, right? So worst case scenario, Islamic dominance amid anarchy. So the UK would collapse into total civil war with Muslim migrants, empowered by high fertility and radicalisation, seizing control of major cities. Native populations are decimated or displaced. And the UK becomes a de facto Islamic state in urban areas. Kind of already is. With rural zones descending into anarchy, global abandonment would seal its fate as a failed state. Migration and demographic replacement. Right, so dominant groups, Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslims. It's always the same. So that would be 3 million in 2025, surged to 20% by 2040, fueled by unchecked migration, 200,000 annually pre-war and native collapse. So Somalis, 300,000, and Syrians, 100,000, form jihadist strongholds. Indians and Sikhs flee en masse, 80% emigrate, while Nigerians scatter, and the native British drop to 50% by 2040. With 3 million killed or displaced. Regional control, well, the Muslims would control London, Birmingham and Manchester, forming 60 to 70% of urban populations. Rural areas, e.g. say Cumbria and Devon, are native holdouts.
At least we get the pretty parts.
I know, I like Devon. I do like Devon.
Again, the parallels, the west and the southwest, like where the original Britons fled to during the Anglo and Saxon invasions.
Oh, this does I took into account other historical situations as well, right. And also worldwide. So I took into account
and also geography,
Balkan and also Lebanon as well. Sorry,
I was just saying geography as well. Cumbria being where the Lake District is, is easier to hold out, I suppose. Yeah, so they would become holdouts, but they would be depopulated. So 80% white. Ethnic cleansing would kill 1 million non-Muslims. So the outcome, obviously urban UK becomes majority Muslim by 2050, resembling a fragmented caliphate. Natives are marginalised, surviving in rural wastelands or as refugees. So what would the ideological and cultural impact be? Well, Muslim influence, radicalised Pakistani and Bangladeshi youth, 30% jihadist affiliated, imposed strict Sharia with public executions and gender apartheid. Somali warlords would enforce clan-based theocracy, clashing with South Asians. And
Salafist ideologies dominate, funded by Saudi and Qatar proxies. So other groups, Indian and Sikh remnants, because bearing in mind most of them are left in this scenario, would form guerrilla resistance but collapse under Muslim assaults, and native militias adopt genocidal nationalism, massacring minority. I'm not advocating for this. This is just the worst case scenario.
I just love how extreme this is.
This is the absolute worst.
I don't think it could necessarily get this bad, if only because even within countries that are already Islamic, they can't govern themselves to begin with, and even within Islamic countries, like really strict Sharia is difficult for them to enforce in the first place.
So cultural shift, urban UK becomes an Islamic state with churches raised. We're already seeing that. And English replaced by Urdu, Arabic in public life. We're already seeing that, actually. There are signs in Urdu. So we are already seeing these things. Rural areas cling to pagan Christian remnants, but lack cohesion. Could see that. So what would be the economic output? Well, the sum of it is that GDP would fall by 90% with no formal economy infrastructure, e.g. the NHS and railways, and the RNLI would collapse and starvation would spread. Crime rates, crime merges with warfare. Fair. No law exists. Warlord enslaved survivors. And obviously, sexual assaults and child soldier recruitment are rampant. You see this in the Arabic world anyway. Group interactions. Well, Muslims would wage jihad against natives, cleansing non-Muslims from cities. Somali-Pakistani rivalries spark intra-Muslim wars, weakening their grip. Native militias collapse after urban defeats, resorting to potential terrorism. Indians and Sikhs are eradicated or flee. So the alliances, well, Muslims would ally with foreign jihadists, so ISIS remnants, while natives gain no external support. All alliances dissolve into betrayal. Governance, what would it look like? Well, urban UK forms loose Islamic confederacy under rival warlords with Sharia as law. Rural areas are ungoverned wastelands ruled by survivalist gangs. Scotland and Wales collapse into complete and utter tribalism.
I'm hearing Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome type society.
Literally, yeah, it does literally
does it say that?
Rural zones descend into Mad Max style anarchy. Global response. Well, the EU bombs jihadist strongholds, fearing a caliphate but avoids boots on the ground. Gulf states fund Muslim warlords while Russia and China loot UK assets. And the US declares the UK a terrorist state and blockades it. Commonwealth.
Starting to sound like 28 days later.
Commonwealth nations collapse under 5 million refugees. And the outcome, the UK is a global pariah with urban areas a jihadist haven and rural zones a wasteland. No nation intervenes, fearing escalation. So I initially wanted to do a segment on health and fitness being a means to bettering oneself in this current climate, but I was ever so slightly put off by someone. This is what you got. Black pill.
Well, two things I would say.
Thanks. I'm so glad I'm back after my week off. Cheers.
Two things I want to add is that, one, even that worst case scenario isn't that insane. If you look at what happened to Yugoslavia, just as one example.
Yeah.
But the other thing to say is we can avoid still at least the worst case scenarios if we get a government that is pro mass remigration. So remigration will save us from the worst excesses of what you've described.
Something that has the spine to do it in the first place. Because fear not, friends, even if it were to get to this, the English would not die. The English would re-emerge upon the global stage like a phoenix from the ashes. There are plenty of historical precedents for populations that have existed in territories for even hundreds of years being expelled en masse, even within a lifetime that for someone who could still be alive today. You mentioned Yugoslavia. You think of the Germans being expelled from Prussia following the Second World War. England, in its history, has expelled mass populations that had been here for a long time. Spain was able to do it. So even in the worst case scenario, we're not gone. So long as the last Englishman breathes breath,
we're
not gone.
No,
it's never over.
The whole point of the segment was it's a thought experiment using just raw data. What are the fertility rates? What are the ideological leanings of the individuals with high fertility rates? What's the historical reflections of these individuals, and what happens when they gain control, and what occurs? And it's important to do this, even though it is a black pill. It's really important to do this because anything less than this is pure ignorance. It's really important to have a handle on the potential scenarios that could occur, so you can sidestep them and completely avoid them. Best case, middle case, worst case. All of this is entirely avoidable. You can stop all of this from happening. And that's why anything less than remigration, it just doesn't cut it.